Ḥaydar ibn Kawus, better known by his hereditary title of al-Afshin, was a senior general of Iranian descent at the court of the Abbasid caliphs and a vassal prince of Khorasan. He played a leading role in the campaigns of Caliph al-Mutazim, and was responsible for the suppression of the rebellion of Babak Khurramdin and for his battlefield victory over the Byzantine Emperor Theophilos during the Anatolian Campaign. Eventually he was suspected of disloyalty and was arrested, tried and then executed in June 841. Name and family background. Afshin is a hereditary title of Khorasan princes at the time of the Muslim conquest of Persia. The term is an Arabic form of the Middle Persian Pishan and Avestan Pisanar, a proper name of uncertain etymology. Minorski suggests that the title Afshin was of Sogdian origin. At the time of the first Arab invasion of Transoxiana under Khaydhar ibn Muslim, Khorasan was inhabited by Iranians, who were ruled by their own princes who bore the traditional title of Afshin. Afshin is generally considered an Iranian, and although two classical sources have called him a Turk, he came from an Iranian cultural region and was not usually considered Turkish. The confusion comes from the fact that the term Turk was used loosely by Arab writers of the time to denote the new troops of the Caliph, despite the inclusion among them of some elements of Iranian origin, including Fergana and Khorasan. Early years. According to Yaqubi, during the reign of the third Abbasid Caliph al-Mahdi, Afshin of Khorasan was mentioned among several Iranian and Turkish rulers of Transoxania and the Central Asian steppes who submitted nominally to him. But it was not until Harun al-Rashid's reign in 794–95 that al-Fadl ibn Yahya al-Barmaki led an expedition into Transoxania and received the submission of Afshin Karakhana, the ruling Akin. Further expeditions were sent to Khorasan by al-Ma'mun when he was governor in Merv and later after he had become caliph. Khaydhar ibn Kawus, the son of the Afshin Karakhana, withdrew his allegiance from the Arabs. However, shortly after Ma'mun arrived in Baghdad from the east, a power struggle and dissension broke out among the reigning family of Khorasan. According to most of the sources, al-Ma'mun's heir, al-Mutazim seconded high-ranking officers to serve under him and ordered exceptionally large salaries, expense allowances, and rations for him. In 831–833, Afshin suppressed uprisings throughout Egypt. On the 2nd of June 832 Afshin succeeded in taking Bima in Egypt. The town surrendered to Afshin following his advice that al-Ma'mun promised safe conduct. Afshin and Babak. In 835, Caliph al-Mutazim appointed Afshin as governor of Azerbaijan to fight against Babak Khurramdin, leader of anti-Islamic Neo-Mazdaki Persian movement of the Khurramites. After a fierce resistance by Babak's army, Afshin eventually defeated it and captured Babak's castle of Baz in August 837. Yaqubi records Afshin freeing 7,600 Arab prisoners from this fortress and he destroyed the castle. The Khurramite leader went into hiding under the protection of a local Christian prince Sal ibn Sunbayth, who later turned him into Afshin. In return for Afshin's achievements, the caliph rewarded him with the governorship of Sind in addition to that of Armenia and Azerbaijan. Anatolian Campaign. In 838, al-Mutazim decided to launch a major punitive expedition against Byzantium, aiming to capture the two major Byzantine cities of central Anatolia, Ankara and Amirayan. The latter was probably the largest city in Anatolia at the time, as well as the birthplace of the reigning Amorian dynasty and consequently of particular symbolic importance. According to the chronicles, al-Mutazim's soldiers painted the word Amirayan on their shields and banners. A vast army was gathered at Tarsus, which was then divided into two main forces. The northern force, under their commander, Afshin, would invade the Armenian theme from the region of Melitna. joining up with the forces of the city's emir, Omar al-Quta. The southern, main force, under the Caliph himself, would pass through the Cilician gates into Cappadocia and head to Ankara. After the city was taken, the Arab armies would join and march to Amorion. Afshin's force included, according to Skylitzes, the entire Arab army of Armenia, and numbered 20,000 to 30,000 men, among whom were some 10,000 Turkish horse archers. On the Byzantine side, Theophilos received early warning of the Caliph's intentions, and set out from Constantinople in early June. His army included men from the Anatolian and possibly the European themes, the elite Tagmata regiments, as well as a contingent of Persian and Kurdish Kuramites whom Afshin had fought against in the past, under their leader Nasser. These people had fled religious persecution in the Caliphate and moved into the Byzantine Empire, where they formed the so-called Persian Torma. Camping at Doralion, the emperor divided his forces, sending a strong corps to reinforce the garrison of Amorion, while he set out with the remainder to interpose himself between the Cilician gates and Ankara. Battle of Anzan in mid-June 838, Afshin crossed the Anti-Taurus mountains and encamped at the fort of Dazimon, between Amasya and Tokata, a strategically important location which served as a concentration point for the Byzantines too. A few days later, on the 19th of June, the vanguard of the main Abbasid army also invaded Byzantine territory, followed 2 days after by the Caliph with the main body. Theophilos was informed of these movements in mid-July. Afshin's force was smaller, but threatening to cut off his supply lines. Consequently, the emperor left a small covering force against the Caliph's army and marched east to confront Afshin. On the 21st of July, the imperial army came into view of the Arab force, and encamped on a hill in the plain of Dazimonites south of the fort of Dazimon, named Anzan. Although Theophilos' principal commanders, Theophobos and the domestic of the schools Manuel, both advised the emperor to make a surprise night attack, the emperor sided with the opinion of the other officers and resolved to wait and launch his attack the next day. The Byzantine army attacked at dawn, and initially made good progress. They drove back one wing of the opposing army, inflicting 3,000 Arab casualties. Near noon, Theophilos resolved to reinforce the other wing, and detached 2,000 Byzantines and the Kurdish contingent to do so, abandoning his post and passing behind his own army's lines. At this point, however, Afshin launched his Turkish horse archers in a ferocious counter-attack which stymied the Byzantine advance and allowed the Arab forces to regroup. The Byzantine troops then noticed the emperor's absence, and, thinking he had been killed, began to waver. This soon turned into a disorderly retreat. Some men fled as far as Constantinople, bringing with them the rumor that the emperor had been killed. Some units, however, were apparently able to retreat in good order and assemble at a place called Chiliocamone. Theophilos found himself isolated with his Tagmata and the Kurds on the hill of Anzan. The Arabs proceeded to surround the hill, but the Byzantines were saved by sudden rain, which loosened the strings of the Turkish bows, rendering them useless. Afshin then sent for catapults to be brought up to batter the Byzantine position. In the meantime, Theophilos' officers, afraid of treachery by the Kurdish troops, persuaded him to withdraw. Breaking through the Arab lines and suffering many wounds in the process, Theophilos and his small escort managed to reach safety at Chiliocamone, where he gradually reassembled the remnants of his army. Siege and fall of Amorium. The Arab army marched in 3 separate corps, with Ashinas once again in front, the Caliph in the middle, and Afshin bringing up the rear, looting the countryside as they advanced. They arrived before Amorium 7 days after their departure from Ankara, and began their siege of the city on the 1st of August. Theophilos, anxious to prevent the city's fall, left Constantinople for Dorylaeum, and from there sent an embassy to Mutasim. His envoys, who arrived shortly before or during the first days of the siege, offered assurances that the atrocities at Sisopatre had been against the emperor's orders, and further promised to help rebuild the city, to return all Muslim prisoners, and to pay a tribute. The Caliph, however, not only refused to parley, but detained the envoys in his camp, so that they could observe the siege. The city's fortifications were strong, with a wide moat and a thick wall protected by 44 towers. According to the contemporary geographer Ibn Khaldun, and the Caliph assigned each of his generals to a stretch of the walls. Both besiegers and besieged had many siege engines, and for 3 days both sides exchanged missile fire while Arab sappers tried to undermine the walls. According to Arab accounts, an Arab prisoner who had converted to Christianity defected back to the Caliph, and informed him about a place in the wall which had been badly damaged by heavy rainfall and only hastily and superficially repaired due to the city commander's negligence. As a result, the Arabs concentrated their efforts on this section. The defenders tried to protect the wall by hanging wooden beams to absorb the shock, but they splintered, and after 2 days a breach was made. Immediately Aetius realized that the defense was compromised. He decided to try and break through the besieging army during the night and link up with Theophilos. He sent 2 messengers to the emperor, but both were captured by the Arabs and brought before the Caliph. Both agreed to convert to Islam, and Mutasim, after giving them a rich reward, paraded them around the city walls in full view of Aetius and his troops. To prevent any sortie, the Arabs stepped up their vigilance, maintaining constant cavalry patrols even during the night. The Arabs now launched repeated attacks on the breach, but the defenders held firm. At first, according to al-Tabari, catapults manned by 4 men each were placed on wheeled platforms, and mobile towers with 10 men each were constructed and advanced to the edge of the moat, which they began to fill with sheepskins filled with earth. However, the work was uneven due to the soldiers' fear of the Byzantine catapults, and Mutasim had to order earth to be thrown over the skins to pave the surface up to the wall itself. A tower was pushed over the filled moat, but became stuck midway, and it and the other siege engines had to be abandoned and burned. Another attack on the next day, led by Ashinas, failed due to the narrowness of the breach, and Mutasim eventually ordered more catapults brought forward to widen it. The next day Al-Afshin with his troops attacked the breach, and attack on the day after. The Byzantine defenders were gradually worn down by the constant assaults, and after about 2 weeks of siege Aetius sent an embassy led by the city's bishop, offering to surrender Amorium in exchange for safe passage of the inhabitants and garrison, but Mutasim refused. The Byzantine commander Boiditzes, however, who was in charge of the breach section, decided to conduct direct negotiations with the Caliph on his own, probably intending to betray his own post. He went to the Abbasid camp, leaving orders for his men in the breach to stand down until his return. While Boiditzes parleyed with the Caliph, the Arabs came closer to the breach, and at a signal charged and broke into the city. Taken by surprise, the Byzantines' resistance was sporadic. Some soldiers barricaded themselves in a monastery and were burned to death, while Aetius with his officers sought refuge in a tower before being forced to surrender. The Arab army then had the city brutally sacked. Downfall. Despite his successes, Afshin's star began to decline, apparently as a result of his jealousy towards Abdullah bin Tahir, the governor of Khorasan, who Afshin apparently regarded as an upstart and a rival for power in Transoxania. Afshin had begun intriguing with Maziar and Karin and Prince Anis Babar of Tabaristan in the Caspian region. Afshin allegedly encouraged Maziar in secret, in the hope that Abdullah bin Tahir would be deprived of his governorship, allowing Afshin to take over the governorship. Maysiar's rebellion was quashed in 839 and Afshin's position became increasingly difficult, which caused Afshin to fall from favor. His situation was made worse by the finding of correspondence between him and Maysiar. Further, the Khurasanian governor, Abdullah ibn Tahir, alleged that he had intercepted some of Babak's wealth Afshin had obtained in the earlier campaign and was seeking to transfer secretly to Afshin's lands in Oshrasana. When Maysiar arrived in Samarra, Afshin was arrested. Maysiar participated in the interrogation of the former general, asserting that Afshin had conspired with him. Others present raised additional questions concerning the sincerity of Afshin's conversion to Islam from Zoroastrianism. Afshin had answers to all the allegations. He claimed that Zoroastrian artifacts and books in his possession were family heirlooms from before he had become Muslim. He explained that when he punished a pair of Muslim fanatics destroying idols in Ushrasana, he was exercising reasonable leadership aimed at maintaining the harmony of his religiously diverse territory. He told his detractors that the formulaic address his people used in writing to him in Persian as Lord of Lords was simply a tradition and did not invalidate his personal belief in one God. All such replies were unsuccessful. Al-Mutazim had a special prison built for Afshin. It was known as the Pearl, and was in the shape of a minaret. There he spent the final 9 months of his life, and there he died in May-June 841.